The early morning mist hung over Windsor Castle like a ghostly veil, but inside the ancient walls, Prince William was already awake, staring at the ceremonial uniform laid out before him. In just hours, he would take his place in one of Britain's most sacred traditions. But this wasn't just another royal duty. This was the moment when a future king would step into the shoes of his ancestors, carrying the weight of 1,000 years of history on his shoulders. As he reached for the scarlet tunic, William couldn't help but wonder, was he truly ready to honor the legacy that had been passed down through generations of royalty? The alarm clock's gentle chime echoed through the private chambers of Kensington Palace at precisely 5:30 in the morning. Prince William, the Duke of Cambridge, had been awake for nearly an hour already, his mind racing with thoughts of the day ahead. Today wasn't just another day in his royal calendar. It was the final practice session before Trooping the Colour, one of the most important ceremonies in the British royal tradition. William stood at the tall windows of his bedroom, watching as the first rays of dawn painted the London skyline in shades of gold and amber. The city was still quiet, with only the occasional sound of early morning traffic drifting up from the streets below. But William's mind was far from peaceful. Today would mark a significant moment in his journey as a future king, a chance to honor both his military service and his royal heritage in one of Britain's most spectacular displays of pageantry. The Duke's personal valet, James, entered the room quietly, carrying a steaming cup of Earl Grey tea on a silver tray. "Good morning, Your Royal Highness," he said softly, placing the tray on the mahogany side table. "Your uniform has been prepared according to your specifications." William turned from a window, offering a brief smile. "Thank you, James. I trust everything is in order." "Absolutely, sir." Colonel Davidson called earlier to confirm the schedule. "The final rehearsal begins at 9 sharp, and they expect you a Horse Guards parade by 8:15 for the preliminary briefing." As William sipped his tea, his thoughts drifted to his father, Prince Charles, and his grandfather, Prince Philip, both of whom had participated in countless Trooping the Colour ceremonies over the decades. The weight of tradition pressed down on him like a heavy cloak. This wasn't just about wearing a uniform and riding a horse. It was about upholding a legacy that stretched back centuries, about representing the crown with dignity and precision. The ceremony of Trooping the Colour had its origins in the early 18th century, when it was necessary for soldiers to recognize their regiment's flag or color in battle. Over time, it had evolved into the official celebration of the sovereign's birthday, a spectacular display of military precision and royal pageantry that drew millions of viewers from around the world. For William, participating in this ceremony was both an honor and a tremendous responsibility. After finishing his tea, William made his way to the dressing room, where his ceremonial uniform awaited. The scarlet tunic of the Welsh Guards hung perfectly pressed, its gold braiding and brass buttons gleaming under the soft lighting. The blue sash of the Order of the Garter lay across a nearby chair, along with the various medals and decorations he had earned through his military service and royal duties. As he began the careful process of dressing, William's mind wandered to his time as a search and rescue pilot with the Royal Air Force. Those had been some of the most fulfilling years of his life, years when he could serve his country in a very direct and meaningful way, saving lives and making a real difference. The transition from active military service to full-time royal duties had been challenging, but events like Trooping the Colour helped bridge that gap, allowing him to maintain his connection to the armed forces that had shaped so much of his character. James assisted with the intricate details of the uniform, ensuring that every button was properly fastened and every decoration was positioned exactly where protocol demanded. The process took nearly 30 minutes, but William appreciated the meditative quality of the routine. It gave him time to center himself, to prepare mentally for the challenges that lay ahead. "Your horse has been prepared as well, sir," James informed him as they completed the final adjustments. "Perseus is in excellent condition, and the grooms report that he's been particularly responsive during training this week." William nodded approvingly. Perseus, a magnificent bay gelding from the household cavalry, had been his mount for several previous ceremonies. The horse was known for his steady temperament and unwavering composure, qualities that were essential when facing the massive crowds and elaborate pageantry of royal events. Building a relationship with Perseus had been one of William's priorities over the past few months, and he was pleased to hear that their partnership was developing well. At 7 o'clock, William made his way to the palace's private dining room for a light breakfast. Catherine was already there, dressed in an elegant morning dress, her hair styled in a simple but sophisticated arrangement. She looked up as he entered, her eyes taking in the impressive sight of her husband in full ceremonial dress. "You look absolutely magnificent," she said with genuine admiration. "Your grandfather would be so proud." William felt a familiar pang at the mention of Prince Philip, who had passed away just over a year earlier. The Duke of Edinburgh had been a constant presence at Trooping the Colour for decades. His military bearing and unwavering dedication to duty serving as an inspiration to everyone around him. William knew that he had big shoes to fill, but he was determined to honor his grandfather's memory through his own commitment to excellence. "I keep thinking about all the times grandfather participated in this ceremony," William admitted as he sat down to a breakfast of fresh fruit and toast. The stories he used to tell about the early years, when everything was so much more formal and rigid. He always said that the key was to remember that you're not just representing yourself. You're representing centuries of tradition and the hopes of an entire nation. Catherine reached across the table and squeezed his hand gently. "You're going to be wonderful, William. You've prepared so thoroughly, and your dedication to getting every detail right shows how much this means to you. The public will see that, and they'll appreciate it." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of William's private secretary, Simon, who carried a leather portfolio filled with the day's schedule and various important documents. "Good morning, Your Royal Highnesses," he said with a respectful bow. "I have the final updates from the ceremony coordinators." Simon spread out a detailed map of Horse Guards Parade, pointing out the various positions and movements that would be required during the practice session. "The weather forecast is favorable, partly cloudy with temperatures in the low 70s. The BBC will be conducting some test filming during the rehearsal, and there will be approximately 200 invited guests observing from the stands." William studied the map carefully, tracing the route that the royal procession would take from Buckingham Palace to Horse Guards Parade and back again. Every turn, every pause, every salute had been choreographed with military precision. There was no room for error, no opportunity for improvisation. This was a ceremony that demanded absolute perfection from everyone involved, from the most senior royals to the newest recruits in the Guards regiments. "Has there been any update on the international delegations?" William asked, knowing that several foreign dignitaries would be attending the actual ceremony in 2 days' time. "The French ambassador will be present, along with representatives from Canada, Australia, and New Zealand," Simon replied. "The protocols team has confirmed that all the necessary arrangements have been made for their reception and positioning during the event." As they discussed the finer points of the ceremony, William couldn't help but reflect on how much his role had evolved over the past few years. Once seen primarily as a young royal finding his way in the world, he was now increasingly viewed as a future king who was actively preparing to take on the full responsibilities of the crown. Events like Trooping the Colour were crucial opportunities to demonstrate his readiness for that role, his ability to carry himself with the dignity and composure that the British people expected from their monarch. At 8 o'clock, William's motorcade was ready to depart from Kensington Palace. The journey to Horse Guards Parade would take approximately 20 minutes through the morning traffic of central London. As the car pulled away from the palace gates, William watched the familiar sights of the city pass by his window: the joggers in Hyde Park, the early commuters hurrying to work, the tourists already gathering outside Buckingham Palace in anticipation of the ceremony that was still 2 days away. The responsibility of his position weighed heavily on William's mind during the drive. He thought about the thousands of people who would line the streets to watch the procession, the millions more who would watch on television around the world, and the deep sense of tradition and continuity that the ceremony represented. In a world that often seemed chaotic and uncertain, events like Trooping the Color provided a sense of stability and permanence, a connection to a history that stretched back through centuries of British heritage. As the motorcade approached Horse Guards Parade, William could see the preparations that were already underway. Soldiers from the various Guards regiments were taking their positions, their movements precise and coordinated despite the early hour. The mounted bands were warming up their instruments, filling the air with fragments of the stirring marches that would soon accompany the full ceremony. Everything was being orchestrated with the kind of meticulous attention to detail that had made British ceremonial events legendary around the world. William's car came to a stop at the entrance to the parade ground, and he could see Colonel Davidson approaching with a small group of senior officers. The moment had arrived for the final rehearsal, the last chance to ensure that every element of the ceremony would proceed flawlessly when the actual event took place. As William stepped out of the car and straightened his uniform one final time, he felt a surge of pride and determination. This was his moment to step fully into his role as a future king, to demonstrate his commitment to the duties and responsibilities that came with his position. The morning air was crisp and clean, filled with the sounds and smells of military preparation. William took a deep breath, squared his shoulders, and walked forward to meet his destiny. The final practice session for Trooping the Color was about to begin, and with it, another chapter in the long and distinguished history of the British royal family. As he approached Colonel Davidson and the waiting officers, William knew that he was ready to honor the legacy of his ancestors and to play his part in one of Britain's most treasured traditions. The ceremony that would unfold over the next few hours would be a testament to the enduring power of tradition, the importance of duty, and the unbreakable bond between the royal family and the people they served. Colonel Davidson saluted sharply as William approached, his weathered face reflecting decades of military service and countless ceremonial events. Behind him stood a line of senior officers, each representing different aspects of the complex operation that would unfold during Trooping the Color. The parade ground stretched out before them like a vast stage, waiting for the drama that would soon play out across its hallowed surface. "Your Royal Highness," Colonel Davidson said with obvious respect, "welcome to the final rehearsal. I trust you're prepared for what promises to be a memorable morning." William returned the salute with practiced precision. "Good morning, Colonel. I'm ready to do whatever is necessary to ensure the ceremony proceeds without incident. How are the preparations progressing?" "Excellently, sir. The Guards have been drilling for weeks, and their performance yesterday was virtually flawless. Today we'll be focusing on the timing of the royal procession and ensuring that all the coordination points work smoothly with your participation." As they walked across the parade ground, Colonel Davidson began pointing out the various elements that would come together during the actual ceremony. The Household Division will be providing the guards, as tradition dictates. We have representatives from all 5 Foot Guards regiments: the Grenadier Guards, Coldstream Guards, Scots Guards, Irish Guards, and Welsh Guards. Your own regiment, the Welsh Guards, will be trooping their color today. William felt a surge of pride at this news. His connection to the Welsh Guards ran deep, having served as their colonel since 2011. The regiment had a distinguished history dating back to 1915, and their battle honors included some of the most significant conflicts in British military history. To see them trooping their color was not just a ceremonial honor. It was a recognition of their continued service and dedication to the crown. They paused near a group of guardsmen who were making final adjustments to their uniforms. William was struck, as always, by their youth and obvious dedication. Many of these soldiers were barely out of their teens, yet they carried themselves with the bearing of seasoned veterans. Their red tunics and towering bearskin hats transformed them into living symbols of British military tradition. But William never forgot that beneath the ceremony were real people with real lives and real commitments to serving their country. "Permission to introduce you to some of the key participants, sir?" Colonel Davidson asked. "Of course, Colonel. I'd be honored to meet them. The first soldier to be presented was Guardsman Roberts, a young man from Cardiff who had joined the Welsh Guards only 18 months earlier. Despite his relative inexperience, he had been selected for a prominent position in the ceremony based on his exceptional performance during training. Guardsman Roberts, William said, extending his hand, I understand you're representing Wales today. How are you feeling about the responsibility? Roberts stood at attention, his eyes fixed straight ahead, but William could see the mixture of pride and nervousness in his young face. Very honored, sir. My family will be watching from home, and knowing that I'm representing both the regiment and my country is something I'll never forget. William was moved by the soldier's simple sincerity. Your dedication does credit to both Wales and the Welsh Guards guardsmen. Your family has every right to be proud. As they moved through the ranks, William made an effort to speak with as many of the participants as possible. He met Sergeant Major Williams, a veteran of 3 tours in Afghanistan who had been selected to carry one of the ceremonial standards. There was Lance Corporal Thompson, who had distinguished herself during recent training exercises and would be part of the escort for the regimental color. Each soldier had a story, a background that had brought them to this moment of ceremonial significance. The mounted troops presented their own unique challenges and opportunities. William was introduced to Captain Morrison, who would be leading the mounted band of the Household Cavalry. The captain's horse, a magnificent black gelding named Wellington, stood perfectly still despite the activity swirling around him, a testament to the months of training that had prepared both horse and rider for this moment. The horses are as much a part of this tradition as the soldiers, Captain Morrison explained as William admired Wellington's bearing. Some of these mounts have participated in dozens of ceremonies, and they seem to understand the importance of what's happening. Wellington here actually participated in the Diamond Jubilee celebrations, and he's never put a foot wrong. William found himself thinking about Perseus, who was being prepared in the stables nearby. The relationship between a rider and his mount was crucial in any military context, but in ceremonial situations, it became even more important. The slightest misstep or moment of nervousness could disrupt the entire proceedings, potentially embarrassing not just the individual rider, but the entire royal family. I'd like to visit Perseus before we begin the formal rehearsal, William told Colonel Davidson. I think it's important for both of us to have a few quiet moments together. The stables were located in a complex of buildings adjacent to the main parade ground. As they walked toward the horse lines, William could hear the familiar sounds of military horses being prepared for duty. The jingle of harness, the gentle nickering of the animals, the low voices of the grooms as they made final adjustments to equipment and tack. Perseus was in his assigned stall, already wearing the ceremonial tack that would be required for the day's events. His coat had been brushed to a brilliant shine, and his mane had been braided in the traditional military style. The horse looked up as William approached, his dark eyes intelligent and alert. "Good morning, old friend," William said softly, reaching out to stroke Perseus's neck. The horse responded by nuzzling against William's hand, a gesture that spoke of the trust and familiarity that had developed between them over months of training. Corporal Hayes, Perseus's primary groom, stood nearby with obvious pride. "He's in excellent condition today, sir. Had a good gallop yesterday morning to work off any excess energy, and he's been calm and focused all week." William appreciated the care that went into preparing the ceremonial horses. These animals were athletes in their own right, required to perform complex movements while carrying riders in elaborate uniforms, surrounded by crowds, music, and all the distractions that came with major royal events. The grooms who worked with them were skilled professionals who understood that the success of the entire ceremony might depend on how well they had prepared their charges. "Has he shown any sensitivity to the music during practice?" William asked, knowing that the mounted bands would be playing throughout the ceremony. "None at all, sir. If anything, he seems to enjoy it. Yesterday, when the band was rehearsing nearby, he was moving in time with the music. It was quite something to see." William spent several more minutes with Perseus, checking his own familiarity with the horse's responses and ensuring that their partnership remained strong. The trust between them was crucial. During the ceremony, William would need to focus on his role as a representative of the crown, confident that Perseus would respond appropriately to every signal and command. As they returned to the parade ground, the full scope of the preparations became apparent. Hundreds of soldiers were now in position, their movements creating a complex choreography of military precision. The band was warming up with scales and fragments of the marches they would play during the actual ceremony. Camera crews from the BBC were positioning their equipment for the test filming that would help them prepare for their coverage of the main event. Colonel Davidson consulted his watch and then addressed the assembled officers. "Gentlemen, it's time to begin the formal rehearsal. Your Royal Highness, if you're ready, we'll start with your arrival and the initial inspection." William took his position at the designated starting point, feeling the familiar combination of anticipation and focus that came with important ceremonial duties. Around him, hundreds of people were preparing to execute a complex sequence of movements that had been refined over generations. Every step had been planned, every gesture choreographed, every musical cue precisely timed. The rehearsal began with William's ceremonial arrival, riding Perseus onto the parade ground in the same manner he would use during the actual ceremony. The horse responded beautifully, his gait steady and confident as they moved into position. William could feel the eyes of everyone present upon him, but rather than feeling pressure, he experienced a sense of connection to the long line of royals who had performed this same ritual over the decades. As they moved through the various phases of the ceremony, William found himself impressed by the skill and dedication of everyone involved. The guards performed their drill movements with mechanical precision, each step executed exactly as prescribed by centuries of military tradition. The band played with passion and technical excellence, their music providing the emotional backdrop that transformed a military exercise into something approaching art. During the trooping of the color itself, the moment when the Welsh Guards' regimental flag was carried through the ranks for inspection by all the assembled troops, William felt a deep sense of connection to his role as colonel of the regiment. This wasn't just pageantry. It was a recognition of the bond between the royal family and the military forces that serve the crown. The ceremony continued with a march past, during which each regiment would pass before William in review. As Perseus stood motionless, William saluted each unit as it passed, acknowledging their service and their commitment to excellence. The precision of their movements was breathtaking. Hundreds of soldiers moving as one, their timing perfect, their bearing immaculate. Colonel Davidson rode up alongside William during a brief pause in the proceedings. "How does it feel, sir? Are you comfortable with the pacing and the transitions?" William considered the question carefully. "It feels right, Colonel. Perseus is responding well, and the timing seems natural. I'm particularly impressed with the standard of the drill. The Guard have clearly put in enormous effort to prepare for this." "They have indeed, sir. Many of them have been training for months, understanding that this ceremony represents not just their regiment, but the entire British military tradition. They take that responsibility very seriously." As the rehearsal continued, William found himself thinking about the broader significance of what they were doing. Trooping the color was more than just a spectacular display. It was a living connection to history, a demonstration of continuity that stretched back through centuries of British heritage. Every soldier on the parade ground was participating in something that connected them to their predecessors, to the countless men and women who had served the crown in times of war and peace. The ceremony also represented the relationship between the monarchy and the military, a bond that had been forged through shared service and mutual respect. William's own military background gave him a deep appreciation for this connection. His time as a search and rescue pilot had taught him the value of teamwork, discipline, and dedication to duty, qualities that were on full display during events like Trooping the Color. As the rehearsal moved toward its conclusion, William felt a growing sense of confidence and satisfaction. The coordination between all the different elements was seamless, the result of weeks of careful preparation and the professionalism of everyone involved. When the actual ceremony took place in 2 days' time, he knew that it would be a fitting tribute to the traditions they were honored to uphold. The final phase of the rehearsal involved the return procession, during which William would lead the guards back toward the palace in the same formation that would be used during the actual ceremony. As Perseus carried him through the prescribed route, William couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation for the real event, when the streets would be lined with cheering crowds and the ceremony would be watched by millions around the world. When the rehearsal finally concluded, William dismounted and spent a few moments thanking the key participants. His words of appreciation were heartfelt. He understood the enormous effort that had gone into making the morning a success, and he wanted to ensure that everyone involved knew how much their dedication meant to him and to the royal family. As he prepared to leave Horse Guards Parade, William reflected on the morning's experiences. The rehearsal had been more than just a practice session. It had been a reminder of the importance of tradition, the value of excellence, and the privilege of serving something larger than oneself. In 2 days' time, he would take his place in one of Britain's most treasured ceremonies, confident in his preparation and proud of his role in continuing a tradition that connected the past with the present and looked forward to the future. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across Horse Guards Parade as William returned for the second phase of rehearsals. The morning's practice had gone well, but Colonel Davidson had identified several areas where fine-tuning would be necessary to achieve the level of perfection expected for the actual ceremony. This afternoon session would focus on the intricate details that separated a good ceremonial performance from a truly memorable one. William arrived to find the parade ground transformed. Additional equipment had been brought in to simulate the exact conditions that would exist during the real ceremony, including the precise positioning of camera equipment, the locations where members of the royal family would be seated, and even recordings of crowd noise that would help the horses become accustomed to the atmosphere they would experience. "Your Royal Highness," Colonel Davidson greeted him. "I hope you had a restful lunch break. This afternoon session will be quite demanding, but I believe we can achieve the level of precision we're aiming for." William appreciated the colonel's attention to detail. In his experience, the difference between adequate and excellent often lay in the willingness to focus on the smallest elements of a performance. "I'm ready, Colonel. What aspects do you want to concentrate on?" "Several things, sir. First, we need to perfect the timing of your salutes during the march past. The television cameras will be capturing every moment, and we want to ensure that your acknowledgement of each regiment appears natural and appropriately timed. Second, we need to work on Perseus's positioning during the trooping ceremony itself. And finally, we want to rehearse the coordination between your movements and those of the other members of the royal family who will be participating." The mention of television coverage reminded William of the global audience that would be watching. Trooping the Color was broadcast live to dozens of countries, with commentary in multiple languages. Millions of people who might never visit London would form their impressions of the British monarchy based on what they saw during this ceremony. The responsibility was enormous, but William had learned to channel that pressure into motivation for excellence. They began with the saluting sequence, which was more complex than it might appear to casual observers. Each regiment had earned the right to specific acknowledgments based on their history and current service. The timing had to be precise, too early, and the salute would appear perfunctory, too late, and it would seem like an afterthought. William practiced the sequence repeatedly, with Colonel Davidson calling out the approach of each unit so that William could perfect his timing. "Remember, sir," the colonel advised, "the salute should begin as the regimental colors come into your line of sight, reach its peak as they pass directly in front of you, and conclude as the final rank moves beyond your position. The movement should be smooth and deliberate, befitting the dignity of the occasion." Perseus seemed to understand the importance of these practice sessions. The horse stood motionless during each rehearsal, allowing William to focus entirely on his own movements without worrying about controlling his mount. The partnership between them had reached a level where William could trust Perseus to respond appropriately to the subtlest signals, freeing him to concentrate on the ceremonial aspects of his role. As they worked through the sequence repeatedly, William found himself thinking about the individual soldiers who would be passing before him during the actual ceremony. Each face represented a story. Someone who had chosen to dedicate years of their life to military service. Someone who had trained extensively for this moment of recognition. His salute was more than just a ceremonial gesture. It was an acknowledgement of their sacrifice and dedication. The trooping of the color itself presented its own unique challenges. This was the centerpiece of the entire ceremony, the moment when the Welsh Guards' regimental flag would be carried through the ranks for inspection by all the assembled troops. William's position during this phase was crucial. He needed to be visible to both the participating soldiers and the watching crowds while maintaining the dignity and composure expected of a future king. The key, Colonel Davidson explained as they rehearsed this portion, is to remember that you're not just observing the ceremony. You're the focal point of it. Every eye will be on you. Every camera will be trained in your direction. Your bearing and demeanor will set the tone for the entire proceedings. William practiced maintaining his position and posture while the ceremonial flag was carried past him. The Welsh Guards had selected their most experienced soldiers for this honor, men who had served the regiment with distinction and who understood the historical significance of what they were carrying. The regimental color represented more than just a piece of fabric. It embodied the spirit and traditions of everyone who had ever served under its banner. During a brief break in the rehearsal, William had the opportunity to speak with some of the soldiers who would be carrying the color. Sergeant Jenkins, a veteran of 2 tours in Afghanistan, would be one of the principal flag bearers. His weather-beaten face and steady demeanor spoke of years of military experience. But William could see the emotion in his eyes as they discussed the upcoming ceremony. "It's the honor of a lifetime, sir," Sergeant Jenkins said simply. "My father served with the Welsh Guards during the Falklands, and he always told me that participating in trooping the color was the proudest moment of his military career. To think that I'll be carrying our colors in front of you and the royal family, it's almost overwhelming." William was moved by the sergeant's words. "The honor is mutual, Sergeant. Your service and that of your comrades reflects the very best traditions of the Welsh Guards. The ceremony wouldn't have the same meaning without soldiers like you to give it substance." As the afternoon progressed, they moved on to rehearsing the coordination with other members of the royal family. Catherine would be watching from the royal box, along with other senior royals, and their presence added another layer of complexity to the proceedings. William needed to be aware of their positions and ensure that his movements and gestures acknowledged their participation while maintaining the focus on his own role in the ceremony. The BBC crew was using this rehearsal to test their camera positions and movements. William found it interesting to observe their professional approach to covering the event. They understood that they weren't just recording a ceremony. They were responsible for sharing a piece of British heritage with the world. Their cameras would capture not just the grand gestures and spectacular displays, but also the smaller moments of human connection that gave the ceremony its emotional resonance. The international audience is particularly interested in seeing how the younger generation of royals approaches these traditional ceremonies, the lead director explained to William during a brief consultation. "Your obvious respect for the traditions, combined with your natural bearing, sends a powerful message about the continuity of the monarchy." William appreciated this perspective, but he was careful not to let the media considerations overshadow the fundamental purpose of the ceremony. Trooping the color existed first and foremost as a military tradition, a way of honoring the service of the Guards regiments and maintaining the connection between the crown and the armed forces. Everything else, including the television coverage, was secondary to that primary purpose. The afternoon rehearsal also included practice with a mounted band, whose performance would provide the musical accompaniment for the entire ceremony. William had always been impressed by the skill required to play complex musical pieces while mounted on horseback, managing both the demands of musicianship and horsemanship simultaneously. The band's performance would help set the emotional tone for the ceremony, transforming a military exercise into something approaching a work of art. The music is absolutely crucial, explained Bandmaster Thompson as they discussed the coordination between the mounted troops and the musicians. Each piece has been selected not just for its musical merit, but for its ability to enhance specific moments in the ceremony. The marches need to match the pace of the troops, while the more ceremonial pieces should reflect the dignity of the occasion. William found himself particularly moved by the traditional airs that would be played during the trooping of the color itself. These melodies had accompanied British military ceremonies for generations, their familiar strains evoking memories of countless previous occasions when soldiers had gathered to honor their service and their sovereign. The continuity represented by this music was as important as any other aspect of the tradition. As the rehearsal continued, William worked on perfecting his interaction with Perseus during the more complex maneuvers. The horse had proven himself to be exceptionally well trained, but the combination of crowd noise, music, and ceremonial activity could present challenges even for the most experienced mount. They practiced the various scenarios that might arise, ensuring that William would be prepared to handle any situation with composure and confidence. One particularly demanding aspect of the ceremony involved the coordination between mounted and dismounted troops. William needed to maintain his position and bearing while hundreds of soldiers moved around him in complex patterns. The timing had to be precise. Any confusion or delay could disrupt the entire sequence and potentially create dangerous situations for both horses and troops. Remember, Colonel Davidson coached, Perseus will take his cues from you. If you remain calm and confident, he'll respond accordingly. But if you show any tension or uncertainty, he'll sense it immediately and may become nervous himself. William found this advice applicable beyond just horsemanship. His role as a member of the royal family required him to project confidence and composure even in challenging situations. The thousands of people who would be watching during the actual ceremony would be looking for reassurance that their future king was capable of handling whatever responsibilities came his way. His performance during trooping the color would be seen as a reflection of his readiness for the larger role that awaited him. The final phase of the afternoon rehearsal involved practicing the return procession, during which William would lead the guards back toward Buckingham Palace. This portion of the ceremony required particularly careful coordination, as it involved moving large numbers of mounted and dismounted troops through the streets of London while maintaining the precision and dignity expected of a royal event. As they rehearsed this sequence, William was struck by the complexity of the logistics involved. Police had to coordinate traffic control, security teams had to ensure the safety of both participants and spectators, and military personnel had to maintain their formations while navigating the crowded streets of central London. The fact that this elaborate operation proceeded smoothly year after year was a testament to the professionalism and dedication of everyone involved. The return procession is where we often see the most spontaneous moments, Colonel Davidson observed as they completed another practice run. The crowds are their most enthusiastic, and there's often interaction between the troops and the spectators that adds a human element to the ceremony. William looked forward to these moments of connection with the public. While the formal aspects of the ceremony were important, he knew that the real value of events like trooping the color lay in their ability to bring people together around shared traditions and values. The cheering crowds who would line the streets represented millions of others who saw the monarchy as a source of stability and continuity in an often uncertain world. As the afternoon rehearsal drew to a close, William felt a deep sense of satisfaction with what had been accomplished. The morning's practice had established the basic framework for the ceremony, while the afternoon session had refined the details that would make the difference between a good performance and a truly memorable one. He was confident that when the actual ceremony took place, it would meet the high standards that the British people expected from their royal family. The late afternoon light was beginning to fade as William prepared to leave Horse Guards Parade. Around him, soldiers and support staff were beginning the process of securing equipment and preparing for the next day's activities. The atmosphere was one of quiet satisfaction. Everyone involved knew that they had accomplished something significant, that they had taken another important step toward ensuring the success of one of Britain's most treasured traditions. As William mounted Perseus for the final time that day, he reflected on the afternoon's experiences. The attention to detail, the commitment to excellence, and the obvious pride that everyone took in their role had reinforced his appreciation for the military traditions that were such an important part of British heritage. In less than 48 hours, he would take his place in the actual ceremony, confident in his preparation and proud of his role in maintaining these vital connections between past and present. The morning of the final dress rehearsal dawned clear and bright, with a gentle breeze that carried the scent of early summer through the streets of London. William awoke feeling a mixture of anticipation and calm confidence. The extensive preparations of the previous days had left him well prepared for what lay ahead, but he understood that today's rehearsal would be the ultimate test of readiness before the actual ceremony. This final practice session would be conducted under conditions as close as possible to those of the real event. A select group of invited guests would be present in the stands, providing the atmosphere of a live audience. The BBC would be conducting a full technical rehearsal, testing every camera angle and audio connection they would use during their live broadcast. Even the weather conditions were similar to what was forecast for the actual ceremony day. William arrived at Horse Guards Parade to find the level of activity had intensified significantly. Security personnel were conducting their final sweeps of the area, while ceremony coordinators made last-minute adjustments to equipment positioning and timing schedules. The Guards' regiments were already assembled, their bearing and appearance reflecting weeks of intensive preparation. Every detail had been scrutinized and refined to ensure perfection. Colonel Davidson approached with his customary crisp salute, but William could see in his expression a satisfaction that spoke of confidence in the preparations. "Good morning, Your Royal Highness. I believe today's rehearsal will demonstrate that we're ready to deliver a ceremony worthy of the finest traditions of the British military." "Good morning, Colonel," William replied, returning the salute. "I must say, the level of preparation has been impressive. Everyone involved should take pride in their commitment to excellence." As they walked toward the assembly area, William noticed details that hadn't been present during previous rehearsals. The invited guests in the stands were dressed in formal attire, creating the atmosphere of dignity that would characterize the actual ceremony. Security officers were positioned at strategic points around the parade ground, their presence subtle but reassuring. The BBC camera crews were operating with the smooth professionalism that would be essential during the live broadcast. Perseus was waiting in his designated position, looking magnificent in his ceremonial tack. The horse's coat gleamed in the morning sunlight, and his bearing suggested the calm confidence that came from thorough preparation. Corporal Hayes was making final adjustments to the saddle and bridle, his attention to detail reflecting the care that had been invested in every aspect of the preparations. "He's in perfect condition today, sir," Corporal Hayes reported as William approached. "Had a good night's rest and seems eager to perform. I think he understands the importance of today's rehearsal." William spent several minutes with Perseus, reinforcing the bond of trust that was essential to their partnership. The horse responded to his presence with obvious pleasure, nuzzling against William's hand and standing perfectly still as final preparations were completed. This relationship had become one of the most rewarding aspects of William's involvement in the ceremony. The understanding between rider and mount that allowed them to function as a unified team. The final dress rehearsal began with the same precision that would characterize the actual ceremony. William mounted Perseus and rode onto the parade ground, feeling the eyes of everyone present focused on his performance. The invited guests in the stands provided an audience that helped create the atmosphere of anticipation and formality that would be present during the real event. As the ceremony unfolded, William was struck by how natural everything felt. The weeks of preparation had created a sense of familiarity with each movement and gesture, allowing him to focus on the broader significance of what they were doing rather than worrying about technical details. Perseus responded to every signal with precision and grace, their partnership reflecting hours of patient training and mutual trust. The trooping of the Welsh Guards' color proceeded with flawless execution. As the ceremonial flag was carried past his position, William felt a deep connection to the history and traditions it represented. This wasn't just a piece of fabric being displayed for ceremonial purposes. It was a symbol of service, sacrifice, and dedication that connected the present moment to generations of soldiers who had served under its banner. During the march past, William's salutes to each regiment felt natural and appropriately dignified. The timing he had practiced so extensively had become second nature, allowing him to focus on the individual soldiers passing before him rather than worrying about the mechanics of his movements. Each face in the ranks represented someone who had chosen to dedicate their life to military service, and William's acknowledgement of their presence carried genuine respect and appreciation. The mounted band's performance was particularly moving during this final rehearsal. Their music provided the emotional soundtrack that transformed a military exercise into something approaching a work of art. The familiar strains of traditional marches and ceremonial airs created an atmosphere of dignity and grandeur that elevated everyone present, from the most senior officers to the youngest guardsmen. Between the various phases of the ceremony, William had opportunities to observe the performance of all the other participants. The precision of the guards' drill movements was breathtaking, hundreds of soldiers moving as one, their timing perfect despite the complexity of the maneuvers they were executing. The standard of their performance reflected not just individual skill, but also the kind of teamwork and mutual trust that were essential to military effectiveness. The BBC crew was capturing every moment with professional competence that spoke of years of experience covering royal events. Their cameras moved smoothly and unobtrusively, recording the ceremony without interfering with its flow or dignity. William found it reassuring to know that when millions of people around the world watched the actual ceremony, they would see a presentation that did justice to the significance of the occasion. During a brief pause in the proceedings, Catherine arrived to observe from the royal box, bringing with her the presence and dignity that had made her such an effective representative of the royal family. Her appearance added another dimension to the rehearsal, helping to create the complete atmosphere that would characterize the actual ceremony. William caught her eye and exchanged a subtle smile that spoke of shared understanding about the importance of what they were doing. Other members of the royal family were also present for this final rehearsal, their participation helping to create the complete picture of royal involvement that made Trooping the Color such a significant event. Each had their own role to play, their own contribution to make to the overall success of the ceremony. The coordination between all these different elements required careful planning and flawless execution. As the ceremony moved toward its climax, William found himself thinking about the millions of people who would be watching when this scene was repeated for real in just 24 hours. They would be seeing not just a spectacular display of military pageantry, but a living demonstration of the values and traditions that had sustained British society through centuries of change and challenge. The return procession provided the final test of readiness. As William led the assembled guards back toward Buckingham Palace, the complexity of coordinating so many different elements became apparent. Mounted and dismounted troops had to maintain their formations while navigating through areas that would be crowded with spectators during the actual ceremony. The precision required was enormous, but everyone involved rose to the challenge with obvious professionalism. The invited guests in the stands provided enthusiastic applause as the procession passed their position, giving everyone a taste of the reception they could expect during the actual ceremony. Their positive response was gratifying, but William knew that the real test would come when thousands of people lined the streets and millions more watched on television around the world. As the final dress rehearsal drew to a close, William felt a deep sense of satisfaction with what had been accomplished. Every aspect of the ceremony had been tested and refined. Every potential challenge had been identified and addressed. The level of preparation had been extraordinary, reflecting the commitment to excellence that characterized everyone involved in the event. Colonel Davidson approached as William dismounted from Perseus, his expression reflecting obvious satisfaction with the day's performance. "Excellent work, Your Royal Highness. I believe we're as ready as we could possibly be for tomorrow's ceremony." The standard of performance today was exceptional. William appreciated the colonel's assessment, but he knew that the ultimate test would come during the actual ceremony. "Thank you, Colonel. The preparation has been thorough, and I'm confident that everyone involved will deliver a performance worthy of the occasion. The dedication I've seen from all participants has been truly impressive." As they walked away from the parade ground, William reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. From the early planning sessions months ago to this final dress rehearsal, every detail had been carefully considered and refined. The result was a ceremony that would honor the finest traditions of British military pageantry while demonstrating the continued relevance of these traditions in the modern world. The afternoon was spent in final briefings and consultations with key participants. William met with representatives from each of the Guards' regiments, acknowledging their preparation and expressing his confidence in their ability to deliver an outstanding performance. These conversations reinforced his appreciation for the professional military culture that made events like Trooping the Color possible. Security briefings occupied another portion of the afternoon, as officials reviewed the comprehensive arrangements that had been made to ensure the safety of all participants and spectators. The complexity of providing security for an event of this magnitude was enormous, but William was reassured by the thoroughness of the preparations and the professionalism of everyone involved. The evening before the ceremony, William spent quiet time at Kensington Palace, reflecting on what the next day would bring. He thought about his grandfather, Prince Philip, and the example he had set through decades of dedicated service to the crown and the military. He thought about his father, who had participated in countless ceremonies over the years, and who had taught him the importance of approaching royal duties with both dignity and humanity. Most of all, William thought about the thousands of people who would participate in or witness the ceremony. The soldiers who had trained for months to achieve perfection, the spectators who would line the streets to show their support, and the millions around the world who would see in Trooping the Color a demonstration of the values and traditions that continued to shape British society. As he prepared for bed, William felt ready for the challenge that awaited him. The preparation had been thorough, the support had been unwavering, and the commitment to excellence had been evident at every level. Tomorrow would bring the culmination of months of planning and preparation, but he approached it with confidence and pride in his role as a representative of the crown and a servant of the British people. The final dress rehearsal had demonstrated that all the elements were in place for a truly memorable ceremony. Now, it was time to deliver on that promise, to honor the traditions of the past while demonstrating their continued relevance for the future. William fell asleep knowing that he was ready to take his place in one of Britain's most treasured traditions, confident that the ceremony would reflect the very best of British military heritage and royal dignity. The morning of Trooping the Color dawned with perfect conditions, clear skies, gentle warmth, and just enough breeze to ensure the ceremonial flags would display properly throughout the proceedings. William had awakened before dawn, not from nervousness, but from anticipation. Today was the culmination of months of preparation, the moment when all the practice, planning, and dedication would come together in one of Britain's most spectacular displays of royal pageantry and military precision. At Kensington Palace, the atmosphere was one of quiet efficiency as William prepared for what he knew would be one of the most significant days of his royal career. His ceremonial uniform had been laid out with meticulous care, every button polished, every decoration positioned exactly where protocol demanded, every element of his appearance reflecting the dignity of the occasion. This wasn't just about looking the part. It was about honoring the traditions and expectations that came with his position as a future king. Catherine joined him for breakfast, her own preparations for the day already well underway. She would be watching from the royal box, and her presence there would add to the sense of family unity that made royal ceremonies particularly meaningful to the British public. Their children would be watching on television, old enough now to understand the significance of seeing their father participating in such an important tradition. "How are you feeling?" Catherine asked as they shared a quiet moment over morning tea. "Ready," William replied simply. "All the preparation has led to this moment, and I feel confident that we've done everything possible to ensure success. More than that, I feel honored to be participating in something that connects us so directly to our history and our values." The journey to Horse Guards Parade took place through streets that were already lined with spectators, despite the early hour. Thousands of people had claimed their positions along the procession route, many having arrived before dawn to secure the best viewing spots. Their enthusiasm was evident even from inside William's official car. Union Jack flags waved from every vantage point, and the excitement was palpable. William found himself moved by the dedication of these spectators. Many were tourists who had traveled from around the world specifically to witness Trooping the Color, but many others were British citizens for whom this ceremony represented something deeply meaningful about their national identity. The presence of so many people, all united in their desire to participate in this shared experience, reinforced William's understanding of why these traditions mattered so much. At Horse Guards Parade, the scene was one of organized magnificence. The Guards regiments were already in position, their red tunics and towering bearskin hats creating a visual spectacle that had remained virtually unchanged for generations. The precision of their formation was breathtaking. Hundreds of soldiers standing in perfect alignment, their bearing reflecting weeks of intensive preparation and a deep commitment to military excellence. Colonel Davidson was waiting as William's car arrived, his expression reflecting both the gravity of the occasion and confidence in the preparations that had been made. "Your Royal Highness," he said with his customary salute, "it's a perfect day for the ceremony. The regiments are ready, the weather is ideal, and I believe we're prepared to deliver a performance that will honor the finest traditions of the British military." "Thank you, Colonel," William replied. "The preparation has been exceptional, and I'm confident that everyone involved will rise to the occasion. This is what we've all been working toward." Perseus was waiting in magnificent condition, his ceremonial tack gleaming in the morning sunlight. The horse's calm demeanor reflected the thorough preparation he had received, and his obvious readiness gave William additional confidence as he prepared to mount. Corporal Hayes was making final adjustments with the attention to detail that had characterized every aspect of the preparations. "He knows today is special, sir," Corporal Hayes reported with obvious pride. "Never seen him more focused or ready to perform. You two make quite a team." William spent several minutes with Perseus, reinforcing their partnership one final time before the ceremony began. The trust between them had become one of the most rewarding aspects of his involvement in Trooping the Color. The understanding that allowed them to function as a unified team, each responding to the other's signals and needs. The actual ceremony began with the same precision that had characterized all their rehearsals, but with an added dimension of grandeur that came from the presence of thousands of spectators and the knowledge that millions more were watching on television around the world. As William rode Perseus onto the parade ground, he could feel the weight of history and expectation, but rather than being overwhelming, it felt like a natural extension of everything he had been preparing for. The inspection of the guards was a moment of particular significance. As William rode slowly along the ranks, he could see in each soldier's face the pride and dedication that had brought them to this moment. These weren't just participants in a ceremonial display. They were active-duty military personnel who understood that their performance today reflected not just on themselves, but on the entire British military tradition. Young Guardsman Roberts, whom William had met during the rehearsals, stood at attention as William passed his position. The nervousness that had been visible during their earlier conversation had been replaced by obvious confidence and pride. His family, William knew, would be watching from their home in Cardiff, sharing in this moment of recognition for their son's service and dedication. The trooping of the Welsh Guards' color was the emotional centerpiece of the entire ceremony. As the ceremonial flag was carried through the ranks, William felt a profound connection to his role as colonel of the regiment and to all those who had served under this banner throughout its history. The precision with which Sergeant Jenkins and his colleagues executed their movements spoke of the reverence they felt for the traditions they were representing. The music provided by the mounted band added layers of emotional depth to every moment of the ceremony. The familiar strains of traditional marches and ceremonial airs created an atmosphere that elevated the proceedings from mere military exercise to something approaching art. William found himself particularly moved by the regimental slow march, a piece that had accompanied Welsh Guards ceremonies for generations and that connected this moment to countless previous occasions of honor and remembrance. During the march past, William's salutes to each regiment carried genuine respect and appreciation for their service. The months of practice had made the timing natural and instinctive, allowing him to focus on the significance of what he was acknowledging rather than the mechanics of his movements. Each unit that passed represented not just current service members, but also the long tradition of dedication to crown and country that defined British military culture. The presence of international observers added another dimension to the ceremony's significance. Representatives from Commonwealth nations and allied countries were witnessing a display that demonstrated the continuing vitality of traditions that connected Britain to its global relationships and responsibilities. William understood that his performance today would be seen as a reflection of the monarchy's continued relevance in the modern world. Catherine's presence in the royal box provided a visual reminder of the family nature of royal service. Her obvious pride in William's performance, evident even from a distance, added a human element to the pageantry that made the ceremony more accessible and meaningful to watching audiences. The royal family wasn't just participating in an ancient tradition. They were demonstrating their continued commitment to the values and responsibilities that came with their position. As the ceremony moved through its various phases, William was struck by how smoothly everything proceeded. The months of preparation had created a sense of confidence and familiarity that allowed everyone involved to focus on delivering their best performance rather than worrying about technical details. The guards executed their drill movements with mechanical precision. The band played with passion and technical excellence, and the coordination between all the different elements was seamless. The BBC's coverage was capturing every moment with professional competence that would ensure viewers around the world saw a presentation worthy of the occasion. William caught glimpses of the camera crews working with smooth efficiency, their long experience with royal events evident in their unobtrusive but comprehensive coverage. The global audience watching this ceremony would see a demonstration of British pageantry at its finest. During one of the ceremony's more complex maneuvers, when mounted and dismounted troops had to coordinate their movements while maintaining perfect formation, William felt particular appreciation for the skill and dedication of everyone involved. The logistics of moving hundreds of people and horses through intricate patterns while maintaining dignity and precision required not just individual competence, but also the kind of teamwork that characterized the best military units. The return procession provided the climactic moments of the ceremony. As William led the assembled guards back toward Buckingham Palace, the streets erupted with enthusiasm from the thousands of spectators who had waited hours for this moment. Their cheering and flag-waving created an atmosphere of celebration that transformed the military precision of the ceremony into something more human and emotionally resonant. Perseus responded magnificently to the crowd, noise, and excitement, his training evident in his calm confidence despite the chaos surrounding them. The horse's steady gait and alert but relaxed demeanor allowed William to focus on acknowledging the crowd's enthusiasm while maintaining the dignity appropriate to his role. Their partnership had reached a level where William could trust Perseus completely, freeing him to engage with the broader significance of the moment. The spectators lining the route represented every segment of British society: families with young children, elderly veterans wearing their service medals, tourists from around the world, and local residents who had made watching Trooping the Color an annual tradition. Their enthusiasm was infectious, creating a sense of shared celebration that reminded William why these ceremonies mattered so much to so many people. As they approached Buckingham Palace, William could see the crowds that had gathered in front of the palace gates, waiting for the traditional balcony appearance that would conclude the day's celebrations. The anticipation was palpable, the result of hours of patience and enthusiasm from people who understood that they were witnessing something truly special. The ceremony concluded with the same precision that had characterized every moment of the proceedings. As William dismounted from Perseus for the final time, he felt a deep sense of satisfaction with what had been accomplished. Every aspect of the preparation had paid off, every detail had been executed flawlessly, and the result had been a ceremony worthy of the finest traditions of British royal pageantry. Colonel Davidson approached with obvious satisfaction evident in his bearing. "Outstanding performance, Your Royal Highness. I believe today's ceremony will be remembered as one of the finest examples of trooping the color in recent memory. Every participant should take pride in what we've accomplished." William appreciated the colonel's assessment, but he knew that the real measure of success would be found in the response of the people who had witnessed the ceremony. As he prepared to join the rest of the royal family for the traditional balcony appearance, he reflected on what the day had meant to him personally and to the institution he represented. The balcony appearance provided the perfect conclusion to the day's events. Standing with Catherine and other members of the royal family, acknowledging the cheers of the crowd gathered below, William felt a profound sense of connection to the people he served and the traditions he was helping to maintain. The ceremonial aspects of the day had been flawlessly executed, but this moment of direct engagement with the public reminded him of the human relationships that gave those traditions their true meaning. As the RAF fly past thundered overhead, providing the spectacular finale to the ceremony, William thought about all the people who had contributed to the day's success. From the youngest guardsmen to the most senior officers, from the grooms who had cared for the horses to the ceremony coordinators who had managed countless details, everyone had played a vital role in creating something truly memorable. The day's events would be analyzed and discussed in the days and weeks to come, but William knew that the immediate response from the crowds and the obvious satisfaction of everyone involved indicated that they had achieved their goals. Trooping the Color 2026 had demonstrated the continuing vitality of British royal traditions while honoring the service and dedication of the military personnel who gave those traditions their substance. As the royal family withdrew from the balcony and the crowds began to disperse, William felt a deep sense of gratitude for the opportunity to participate in something so meaningful. The ceremony had been more than just a spectacular display. It had been a reaffirmation of values, a celebration of service, and a demonstration of the enduring bonds that connected the monarchy to the people of Britain and the Commonwealth. The months of preparation had culminated in a single day of perfection, but William understood that the real significance of Trooping the Color lay not in its flawless execution, but in what it represented about continuity, tradition, and the shared values that defined British society. As he began the process of transition back to his regular royal duties, he carried with him the satisfaction of knowing that he had played his part in maintaining one of Britain's most treasured traditions, ensuring that it would continue to inspire and unite people for generations to come.